and I are so happy to be here with you today to share with you some donations that the Louisiana Department has received over the past few years. My name is Charlene Bonnette, and this is my colleague, Samuel Ayers. We're sharing a computer today. We figured that would be the best way to do this. So the donations that we're going to look at today are the Louisiana DOTD early highway and interstate construction photographs, Sheryl St. Germain's papers, who is an author and a poet, a Louisiana author and a Louisiana poet, Louisiana State Board of Engineers correspondence, the Daily Iberian newspaper collection, St. Martin Parish slides and their oral histories, and Louisiana State documents from the University of Colorado. So the DOTD photographs, they were donated between 2012 and 2016. There's an estimated 8,000 of these photographs in the collection. And the reason that I included this is because it's such an awesome collection, and in January, we just finished processing the last photograph. We also later received 13 boxes of project construction cards. There's about 1,000 boxes per index, 1,000 index cards per box that relate to the photographs, and the collection dates from the late 1920s to the 1970s. So let's take a look at some of these photographs. And these are just examples of photographs that are in the collection, and we're going to take a closer look at each one of these. So R.B. Richardson was the highway director in the 1960s when they started the interstate construction project throughout Louisiana. And these are the completed Interstate 10 and Interstate 20 signs. Some of my favorite photographs are the models they use, because we did not have computers, and they would make a model of what they wanted to construct. So off to the right, you see April 10, 1959. That is the Plank Road Airline Highway interchange in Baton Rouge. And the photograph at the bottom is the completed project. I also love these photographs because you can see what was there before the construction started. All that is so built up now. These are some of the Highway Department engineers from the 1930s. Interstate construction in New Orleans, May 16th, 1967. I love these. You can see what was on each side of the interstate, and then see where the interstate stopped because it was still being constructed. This is the interstate construction in Baton Rouge. So the arrow at the top is the newly constructed Department of Transportation building. And then you see where the interstate cuts off with the second arrow. And then sadly, you see all the buildings in that pathway that will eventually be torn down. The old Mississippi River Bridge under construction, 1938-39. You see it still has pieces that need to be added. This is the new Mississippi River Bridge just after it was completed, and it's so built up now, but you can see there was, it looks like some, not farmland, but a lot of grassy areas that were still open. Early road construction equipment. This is from the 1940s. This is 1949. They were using mules to help grade the roadway. This is one of the project construction cards. So on these cards, we get the project number, which is also on the photograph, the type of road, the district, the name of the road, the parish, miles of construction to complete and the cost, the date the bid was accepted, the work order date, some remarks such as what stage the construction is in, final estimate dates, and a little bit more information. So that is a as I said, there's 8,000 photographs in that collection. So that's just a small sampling of the wonderful photographs that are in that collection. And it covers almost every corner of the state, which is really exciting. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Samuel, and he is going to talk to you about the Sheryl St. Germain papers that we received in March 2020. Let me pass him the headset.
Everybody. So this collection that we're going to talk about is the Sheryl St. Germain Papers collection. So for those of you who don't know who Dr. Germain is, like myself when we first started out meeting her, she is a New Orleans native, and she got her bachelor's degree at Southeastern, and she did her master's and her doctorate at UT Dallas. Since then, she's become really a prolific writer and poet. She taught at UT Dallas, the University of Louisiana Lafayette, Knox College, Iowa State, Chatham University, and where she is currently at the University of Pittsburgh now. At Chatham, she served as the director for the MFA program in creative writing and co-founded the Words Without Walls project there. In addition to her many literary awards, in 2018, she was named the Louisiana Writer of the Year. So we were really super stoked to have her personal papers and everything brought to us. So it was donated in early March, if you can remember the bygone days, pre-COVID, March 2020. It was a relatively small collection, only 3 boxes, but it contained 45 journals, several stacks of unbound collections, so the manuscript drafts, that's what I'm referring to there. And the general range was in the neighborhood between 1976 to 2016. So you see here, these are the 3 boxes. So about a bit about how we received it, the condition. So again, we got it in our early March, and it was in 3 really relatively well organized boxes. And we were, kind of excited about that. And she also provided a finding aid for the donation, which was really, really helpful because aside from the journals, the unbound manuscripts would have been a little bit difficult to, either figure out what was what, or what the titles were. And she provided those in her finding aid, so that really helped out. Boxes 1 and 2 were filled with the journals from 76 to, or well, that says 78, I apologize, 78 to 2016 respectively. And when we went about rehousing them, instead of just kind of smushing them into another box or putting them in an acid-free box, we put about 5 or 6 of them in an acid-free box to themselves, and kind of interwove some buffered paper, just because the journals, she picked out the wildest journals, and they were different in different sorts of bound materials. So not knowing and not having the time to really sit and figure out what was what, we just kind of interwove some paper, some acid-free paper, to kind of provide a buffer between each one. Because they were all sorts of different, materials, and I just didn't want that to, bleed onto each other in any way. So the collection was in really stable condition. All the journals were bound, and only a few of the personal papers really kind of reflected their age. I'd say that really only her doctoral dissertation really kind of showed some yellowing and browning, and so that was really the only thing that we had to really take into consideration. And similarly for when we were rehousing the unpublished manuscripts, we just kind of between each one interwove some acid-free paper just to kind of mitigate any migration of fumes or chemicals between the papers. So that's what we did with that. That's me going about rehousing, just kind of showing you in depth the clamshell boxes that we had and how we went about rehousing them. So the next one, this one was a bit of a doozy. This was donated in November 2019. It's the Louisiana State Board of Engineers documents collection. it was one box with 6 to 7 file folders filled with documents, and roughly 200 individual pieces of paper were in each file. So it made for approximately 1,500 total pieces of paper, or individual pieces of paper. And the collection ranged from 1884 to 1888. This collection contained a variety of letters, drawings, memos, Western Union telegrams, and postcards exchanged between public officials, landowners along Bayou Lafourche and the Mississippi River. And I also want to say, well, that would have been the Mississippi River, but down in Plaquemines Parish. It involved members of the Louisiana State Board of Engineers and several individuals involved with general levee maintenance and planning in the mid to late 1880s. And some noteworthy signed documents within the collection were signed by then Louisiana Governor Samuel D. McHenry, and also the Louisiana State U.S. House Representative Curtis Coe Bean, and the Arizona Territory House of Representative member J. Floyd King. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But most of the documentation was just general routine discussion between a few gentlemen: Sidney F. Lewis, Henry Richardson, Frank W. Kerr, and John Smith. To be completely honest, we're not exactly sure how these were stored with the Department of Transportation. It was given to us in a Georgia Pacific box, and it just contained 6 or 7 file folders, and they were a little bent. The file folders were bulging quite a bit, and so all of the papers kind of took on the shape of that sort of like bulging or sort of warped look. They were a little brittle. The paperwork was a little brittle, but the paper was 140 years old, so it's kind of understandable. Some browning as well. So when it came to rehousing, I took each individual paper and enclosed it in some acid-free paper to keep the we didn't want anything migrating to the other paperwork, because a lot with the way it was stored alphabetically, and they had used, whenever it was put into storage, permanent marker to denote A, B, C when filing it away, and that paper and the permanent marker had bled onto some of the paperwork, and so we knew that the paper was accepting outside chemicals, and we didn't want that. We wanted to stop that now that it's with us, and so I went about putting papers in between each one, so that 2 pieces of paper times 1,400, so there's 2,800 fresh pieces of paper in between each one. Aside from those really obvious concerns, like I said, going on 140 years old, the documents were in really good legible shape, which I was surprised. Regardless, I was really focused on being careful with the collection, and I just wanted to keep a housing strategy that really kind of enabled people to continue to file through it. So once we, you can see right there, we went ahead and put it into a standing file folder case. And so now you can look through it as if you were going through the files, back in the late 1800s. So it's, I hope that it now is more usable for people who want to kind of take a look at it. Okay, and so now we're going to transition one more time, or well, no, not one more time. I'm going to come back in a second, but this is the Daily Iberian newspaper that we've been working on as well.
Okay, so the Daily Iberian newspaper collection is just that. We our administration received a call that they were moving to a new facility, and that the old facility that they were in was going to be torn down. And so over the course of 2 days, we got a U-Haul and made 2 trips between Baton Rouge and New Iberia, And what we ended up with were 298 bound newspapers, their microfilm collection for the New Iberian from the 1880s to 2015, over 1 million negatives that their newspaper photographers had taken, the vertical files and index, and a negative subject index. And the date ranges from the 1880s to 2017. So, okay, this is what it kind of looked like. We had all staff come to help with the unloading of the U-Haul. And so in the middle, we were putting them on the tables, but then the tables, they're very sturdy, but they started bowing from the weight. And so we got them on the floor and on the chairs. The upper right, those, we have probably about, I don't know, 9, 10 carts full of boxes like that that were holding the negatives. The image off to the left top is where we're storing the bound volumes until we can find a place for them. The microfilm collection, bottom left, and then their vertical file collection that is off to the bottom right. So the neat thing about these negatives is they have all this identification on them. The negative number, the subject. And then as I was leaving, I happened to see this file cabinet off to the side. And so they were getting rid of everything. So I opened it up, and it's a negative index, which has the negative number and the subject, and it's alphabetical by subject, which also corresponds to what's on the negative. So I thought to myself, oh my gosh, if I had missed this, I don't know what I would have done. So I was really thrilled to have this. What we're going to be doing with the vertical files, we're going to be removing the newspaper clippings because we don't need those. We want the index because we have the microfilm. Some of the oldest, as you can see from bottom right, were wrapped in, I think that's saran wrap. And so we immediately got that taken care of. But it was a huge, huge collection that I was just absolutely thrilled to get. The St. Martin Parish Slides and Oral Histories collection, our administration received a call that they had 1,471 slides from 1969 to the 1970s of St. Martin Parish, and asked if we were interested in those, and we were. And when we went to get those, there were also some oral history tapes that there were about 20 of those from 1975 that they gave us for safekeeping. There was also a detailed index that identified each of the slides. So how awesome is that? You can see the index in the middle. It's the one with the little clip. Identifies every slide. And I've had slide collections before that didn't have any identification on them, and I'm holding them up to the light trying to see what they are. I don't need to do that with this collection. It's going to be absolutely wonderful. And it was donated by the St. Martin Parish Library. And here we are, Rebecca Hamilton, our state librarian, myself, Charlene Brew, and Patty, who works with the archives at the St. Martin Parish Library. They took a picture of us and kind of showed a bit of the collection that we were bringing back to the library. This image is from February 2020, so right before COVID, so none of us have masks on. Yes, Samuel is now going to talk to you about the Louisiana State documents from the University of Colorado. And when I say Louisiana State documents, it was their whole Louisiana State document collection. So let Samuel talk to you about that. He's the one that processed it.
So yeah, like Charlene said, I processed the Louisiana State documents collection from the University of Colorado. So this is the last collection we're going to talk about today. Last year, in the fall, the recorder of documents from the University of Colorado at Boulder contacted Charlene to let her know that they had a really large collection or sizable collection of Louisiana state documents at their university, and they were looking to get rid of them. And they range from about 1880 to 1960, with the focus being between 1920 and 1950. Of 19 boxes of official state publications. And Charlene said, yeah, we'll take it, because we either needed it or it would be a really great backup, and plus anytime we can get state documents from the 60s back, we're always going to take it. So it was really great to get this collection. So as you can see, the boxes were densely packed. So it was a lot of information. So we got this back in October, or we were contacted in October, and we received it in December. And University of Colorado Boulder was super excited that we took all of their stuff, because they didn't want to have to contact a bunch of other places and kind of dink and dunk the rest of the collection around. So they were super excited that we took the whole thing. And during quarantine, I took the collection home and set about coding it to the old Louisiana documents coding format, because if we were to do this in the new coding system, it would be put interwoven between stuff that is in like 2018, 2019, and we wanted this to reflect the old coding, so that it would be able to fit onto our shelves and be more kind of intuitive as to where it was in the collection, in the departments, because a lot of these departments have kind of changed names, and so it would just make more sense to put it into next to its contemporaneous items. So that is that collection. It took about two months to do. From, I think, when we were in quarantine, it took me from March to maybe early May to finish up. But this was one that we were really excited to get done, and we're now currently in the process of reshelving, or we've sent this to our technical services. They've got it in the system for us, and so now we're in the process of shelving it. So that is what we have for now. We have plenty to do, especially with the Daily Iberian collection. That one's going to set us back possibly a generation. We are going to be busy with that one. So if y'all have any questions, you can let us know. If you have any questions, I can answer it myself, or ask Charlene to the right.
More pictures.
Yeah, is that more pictures?
Yeah,
okay.
More pictures of the collection.
Yeah, this is more pictures of the collection.
That was quite big. There we go. So, do we have any time for questions?
I don't know. What time is it?
9:45.
It's 9:45. What's my cutoff time?
Technically now, but we can allow
Okay.
like an extra 5 minutes for questions if anyone has anything. Just put it in the chat. But that was a good presentation, guys. Thank you so much. I'm terrified at some of the numbers you were saying. I'm like 1 million negatives.
Yeah, safe estimate is 250,000, but it could very easily be closer to 500,000, or a million. I'm not gonna count. You're welcome to come and count.
That's a scary number. Thank you. I'm good over here. But yeah, it looks like we don't have any questions in the chat. So thank you all for your presentation and for listening. And the next session is going to be in about 15 minutes.